The June 26 primaries were amazing for Democrats, and a lot of shaking up between the Democratic and Republican parties, and along with primary turnout, and a number of governor races or House races became competitive, or progressive Democrats even won against establishment Democrats. In a number of these races, like the one on your screen right now, in the Maryland governor race, a number of establishment statewide officials had endorsed Rushern Baker, the Prince George's County executive, my county executive, and Ben Jealous, the former president of the NAACP, was able to trounce Rushern Baker by a considerable margin. Original opinion polling showed Rushern Baker ahead of Ben Jealous by considerable margins. It soon narrowed down, and Ben Jealous was able to win. So the big question is, how was a progressive Democrat able to win in a state like Maryland? If we go back to 2016, while Hillary Clinton won 63%, over 33.2% for Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. When we look at the Democratic primary now, why didn't Rushern Baker, a Hillary Clinton-type Democrat, one that was backed by the same people that backed Hillary Clinton, why didn't he win by such a large margin? And the answer pretty much is that the Democrats are turning away from establishment Democrats. We go over to a state like New York, overwhelmingly voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Let's take a look at the U.S. House District 4. Joseph Crowley, the number 4 Democrat in the United States House of Representatives, lost to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a progressive Democrat running in this district. Okay, this district is solidly Democratic, but the progressive Democrat was able to trounce the incumbent, one that is extremely prominent and a top political figure amongst the Democratic Party, clearly backed by almost every Democrat in the House. And then all of a sudden, a progressive comes around and upsets. And it wasn't an upset by 1 to 2%, around 15%. In fact, exactly 15%. And 15% of the vote went to the progressive over the establishment Democrat. So we're seeing a little bit of a withdrawal from a number of these establishment Democrats. And if you look in the number of other races in the House districts, a number of incumbents are being challenged. Whether or not they're progressives or not, these establishment Democrats aren't doing too well. We just passed one, House District 12. The incumbent only won with 59% of the vote, compared to other incumbents which are winning by a number of margins. If we look at the U.S. House District 9, another incumbent only won by 4%. Okay, that's rounding. 52% for the incumbent, 48% for the opposer. So that's something that's also prominent, okay? Again, incumbents are doing pretty well in some other races. You can't take away from that. But a number of them are uncontested, and if other Democrats had actually came in and made these races competitive, then it probably would have. And looking in the U.S. Senate, not much to talk about there. But Maryland, sorry, my screen recorder cut out, but I was talking about the state of Maryland and how it was Hillary Clinton territory. I mean, this was a safeguard for the Democrats. This was an area they couldn't lose. John Kerry won here. Al Gore won here. Barack Obama won here. This state usually decides the winner of the Democratic primary in general, and now all of a sudden they have a progressive Democrat win. And considering Rushern Baker was backed by so many statewide officials, I mean, the list was endless. A number of statewide officials had backed the PG County executive, and then we look at the county map. Well, the only county that Rushern Baker won was his home county, and it wasn't even by a large margin, okay? Rushern Baker was able to win here, but in my home county, but a number of Democrats hadn't voted for him. Ben Jealous was able to run up the map in a number of other counties that were previously safe for Hillary Clinton. They were safe for establishment Democrats in the Senate primary, okay? They all went for Ben Cardin in the Democratic primary, and then Ben Jealous, the progressive Democrat, probably hated by a number of establishment Democrats, comes out and wins. And also, he is probably one of the few competitive people in this race. Rushern Baker had no chance at winning the general. Ben Jealous is a candidate that actually does have a chance. And let's say Ben Jealous goes on to win the Maryland governor race against the second most popular governor in the United States. And let's say, I mean, it is possible. I'm not saying it's likely, but if it happens, it'll be a huge staple for the progressive movement. This is going to be something that's going to be put up on almost everything progressive. I mean, people are going to remember this. People are going to remember last night, and people are remembering last night. It was something that was extremely prominent for progressive Democrats, along with turnout in a number of these races, and a number of these candidates are now becoming a little bit more progressive, a little bit more left-leaning. And it's not just progressive candidates. Some socialist candidates actually won. And also, looking at these maps and looking at this county map in my home state, this was a huge shocker to me. I did not expect Ben Jealous to win at all. Looking at opinion polling data, well, it's probably because I'm from PG County. I mean, Rushern Baker's home county. But also, I didn't really see it in Maryland, who nominated progressive. Think about it. It was unspeakable 2 years ago when Bernie Sanders handedly lost this primary back in April 2016, and then all of a sudden a progressive Democrat comes in. We're seeing a new wave in the Democratic Party, and establishment Democrats are worrying. Last night was a wake-up call to a number of establishment Democrats. Their primaries are no longer going to become easy and uncontested. Their governor's races are no longer to be just the ones backed by these statewide officials on the Democratic side. There is influence from outside of the state, and the Progressive Party is becoming more and more prominent in the Democratic Party. Previously, it was a little bit of the minority. Yes, they voted for Bernie Sanders, but it wasn't like Bernie Sanders was the people's candidate. Yes, the people loved him, but they didn't vote for him. He didn't win the primary. And that's how the Democratic Party was able to shut them up. They were able to take them and say, you're not worth anything because you didn't vote. Well, now the Democratic Party can't do that. They can't ignore one of their biggest voting groups, and that's something that's going to be extremely hurtful to them. God forbid for the Democrats that the Progressive Party pulls away from the Democratic Party and goes to the Green Party or forms their own party like the Progressive Party. That would extremely be detrimental to the Democratic Party. They probably won't do it because they know a Democrat or a progressive candidate couldn't win on their own against a Democrat or a Republican, and it's probably not going to happen. But if it does happen, the Democratic Party will be left in shambles because a number of these voters are now turning to a more progressive stage. Hillary Clinton was polling 80% in 2014 and then around 70% leading into 2015, and then all of a sudden finished off at around 50-something%. She lost a number of voters, and a number of those voters' ideologies changed from a moderate and more centrist Democrat to a more progressive Democrat. Like if we look at the state of West Virginia, overwhelmingly voted for Bernie Sanders in the 2016 Democratic primary. In the exit polling data, they said they wanted a more conservative president. Well, now they're looking for someone who's a little bit more progressive on their ballot, and that was something that was pretty prominent in the Senate primaries in West Virginia. Yes, the incumbent did win by a large margin, but there also shouldn't have been that much progressive opposition when we looked at the polling data in 2016 on the exit polling data for Bernie Sanders voters. So looking at a number of these races, progressive Democrats are making a much more, indentation on the Democratic Party. They're putting themselves forward, and they're winning. They're not just giving up these races because establishment Democrats have thrown all their money or all their support back to one candidate. I mean, defeating the number 4 Democrat in the House of Representatives in a primary of all things, that should be something that's extremely prominent. That is something that's going to be a headline, and it is a headline for a number of these news reports. You go over to New York, in that district, that's probably going to be the talk for a number of months. And when we lead up into the general and that progressive candidate wins, that's one more progressive in the House of Representatives. And there's going to be a lot more progressives in the House of Representatives if this trend continues. They went from being nothing back in 2013, 2014, no implication on the Democratic primary process or the party itself. Bernie Sanders rolls around, boom, all of a sudden there's something meaningful, but there's something that the Democratic Party would live without. Now this is literally half of their base. This is something that's making intrusions on their safest states. New York, safe for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Maryland, safe for Hillary Clinton in 2016. And it wasn't just like a safe by 10 to 20%. This was a 30-point margin. This was something that even within 10 margins of error wouldn't have gone to Bernie Sanders, and that's something that's extremely prominent. Turnout wasn't the highest in the Maryland primary race, and it wasn't the best, but this, again, is an off year and a midterm year, so primary turnout can't be expected to be that much. And another state, Oklahoma, Connie Johnson, the 2014 Senate nominee, got 38.6% of the vote. Not as much as Bernie Sanders back in 2016, but she is a Bernie Sanders-type candidate. And Drew Edmondson was expected to win, so I can't really say anything. But again, there was more turnout on the Democratic side than in 2016 in a presidential election year. So that's something that's extremely prominent. Bernie Sanders really didn't win here like he won in states like Wisconsin or West Virginia or in Oregon. So you can't really argue that it's the same type of state. But Connie Johnson did pretty well going against someone who was expected to win by a large margin. So looking at all of these results, progressive Democrats are doing extremely well in a number of these races. And when the future primaries come out, we'll see those results, and it'll probably show good news for progressive Democrats. I'm not going to say that they're going to become the majority in the Democratic Party just yet because we haven't reached that limit. But sooner or later, there's going to be a progressive in almost every Democratic primary, and that's not good for establishment Democrats because what last night showed establishment Democrats is they're not going to easily win every single thing they run for just because they are the incumbent or backed by the DCCC or the DNC or the DNCC or any type of Democratic establishment. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below. Comment down the things you want me to talk about more, and I will see you all tomorrow.